Welcome, everybody, to the Jim Masters Show live entertainment lifestyle variety talk show series. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm your host, Jim Masters, and it's an extraordinary episode. We've got some really spectacular people. I'm so tongue-tied. I'm so excited about it. We have some spectacular people who are joining us here on the show. For those of you who are fans of the Dick Van Dyke Show series, and who isn't? We have some amazing guests that have ties to that amazing series. Of course, starting with Larry Mathews, yes, who played, of course, Ritchie Petrie on the Dick Van Dyke Show, played Rob and Laura Petrie's son, played, of course, Rob and Laura by the incomparable Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore. Also joining us, two return guests you may remember, David Van Deusen, fabulous producer of the 60th anniversary celebrating the Dick Van Dyke Show, and also good friend Douglas Denoff, who's a renowned Broadway producer and investor, and his dad, Sam, one of the head writers on the Dick Van Dyke Show as well. A real treat here on the show to have all of them here just for you. Hope you guys are doing well. If you enjoy this episode, of course, give it a thumbs up, like. We're broadcasting right now on our YouTube channel, which is Jim Masters TV, which houses hundreds and hundreds of episodes of our series with guests coming in from Broadway and Hollywood, television, film, music, stage, culinary arts, sports, comedy, inspiration, and everything in between. And thanks everybody for all the great comments. We have an international audience watching live right now from all around the world. We broadcast here from the New York area, but we have viewers that comment and subscribe and follow and celebrate from all across North America, South America, as well as Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, New Zealand. We're still waiting for one or two people from the Arctic Circle. So if you have some cousins up there, ring them up and tell them we're on right now. We see a lot of comments already built up. We have the JMS Levity chat room. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, which costs nothing to do, you get to comment and you can actually interact with one another. All the viewers around the world are commenting right now. We might even sprinkle a comment or two on the actual screen while we're here live. And we love doing that with you as well, interacting, very interactive production here. And we're approaching somewhere around 900 episodes we have done, which is absolutely incredible. Of course, you remember Larry, or I should say Ritchie. There he is with one of the fabulous stories we appreciate. We got some really cool imagery that we're going to be showing here of Larry, of course, through the years with we were just talking about the incomparable Dick Van Dyke, who is at the time of this show about 97. Yeah. And God bless him. And there, of course, is Larry with Dick and with another incomparable person, Mary Tyler Moore, of course, another great, and you can see that in one of the show opens, that scene there. We've got a lot of great photos to show you. And of course, as I mentioned, Douglas Denoff is here, and he's a wonderful friend. And again, he's a big Broadway producer and investor. He's been in the industry of broadcast and of Broadway for years. His father, as I mentioned, the incomparable television producer and writer extraordinaire, Sam, was heavily involved with the Dick Van Dyke Show and writer of a lot of those fabulous episodes with Bill Persky that you find so incredibly funny. It's Dick Van Dyke. There's Sam as well. Dick Van Dyke, one of my personal favorite shows of every show that's ever been created. There's just something about it. It still has a timeless nature to it. There is the gang, and also joining us once again, as I mentioned, is David Van Deusen, who helped put this evening together with me, which I appreciate. And you may recall he was on with us with the incredible celebration of the 60th anniversary of the Dick Van Dyke Show. And there's some more great shots right there. But if you have not seen that yet, we're going to tell you how you can see that special. It is really chock full of incredible nuggets and information about the series and interviews with some of the stars of the show. But again, Larry is actually here and he's got a lot of cool things to share. Now, he's not in Los Angeles, believe it or not. He makes his home in beautiful Portland, Oregon. And it's a beautiful place to be. There he is there. as Ritchie, and so many incredible memories. But it is really a pleasure, and we're going to get the show started. I see a lot of comments again built up here. We thank you for the enthusiasm, for sharing the links on all of your social media and all the other cool things that you guys do. Let's get the show started. Let's welcome our very special guests, starting with David Van Deusen joining us here. David, welcome. It's so good to see you once again. Thanks
Good to see you, Jim.
Oh, you've been well, my friend?
We have, yes. Here in upstate New York, away from the snow in Buffalo. So we're very happy about that.
Coming to us from Albany, New York, and in New York City, Douglas Denoff. Doug, how are you, my friend?
Hello, Jim. How are you? Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all again. Nice to see so many names on the chat that I've seen before. Lots of people like you, Jim. That's a fabulous thing.
As my father has always said and told us since we were kids, whenever anybody says something kind or nice, ask them to please put it in writing and address it management.
Noted. Well, get it.
Yeah, get it. Thank you. Thank you, my friend. And of course, Larry Mathews is here, coming to us from Portland, Oregon. Larry, welcome to the show. It is so good, and it's such a pleasure to have you here, my friend.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. It's good to be here. Hey, guys. Good to see you guys as usual. Everybody good? So, yep.
So I'll start with you, Larry. A lot of people probably always ask this question, but good to know for some of our viewers that are watching internationally who might not know. How did that opportunity come for you to participate in what has become this iconic piece of extraordinary television, the Dick Van Dyke Show?
Well, I mean, it's a classic case of the right place at the right time, I think.
Yeah.
I was as a kid, I was always I'm one of 7 children, so I was always trying to get the spotlight on me and away from my brothers and sisters. So I guess somebody recognized that and put me in touch with my mother, actually, with a woman who had done acting lessons for children. And then basically did a showcase. The agents took a look and saw it, and they sent me an interview with Carl, and came down to me and another child at the time. And Carl wanted somebody who'd really never done anything. So somebody kind of new in the business and that they could take and just, let go and be Ritchie. And they chose me at the end. And so again, just lucky, right place, right time, very blessed, very wonderful. And I can't speak enough of the amazing experience and the wonderful people that it's led to me in my life and what it's done for me in my lifetime.
Absolutely. What was the feeling like on set, to be on set with so many extraordinary people, from the writers and producers, directors, the Carla Reiners of the world, the Mary Tyler Moores, Dick Van Dyke, Maury Amsterdam, Rosemary, guest stars that came in? What was it like for you? Were you cognizant of that, or was it just, we're having fun and I'm doing my thing and enjoying the ride?
Well, I think a lot of both in a lot of ways. I think at the beginning, I was cognizant that I was doing this show and doing something different, and which, to me was just having a great time playing. I think that as a group of our main group, it was truly like a family, like the old cliche. And I know everybody says that, but it was. We were all very close to each other. We all worked very well together, and they treated me like their son, everybody really on the show. And then as I got older and kind of started to become more aware of what we were doing, then it became really like a special place to be in terms of with the guest stars that I would get to meet, Don Rickles and Vic Damone and on and on and on, Chad and Jeremy. I mean, these just to name a few, and it was really a special time in my life. And I like I said, it was very much family. It was really cool.
So again, the atmosphere must have been, like you said, really something. For you, were there episodes that were some of your favorites that just for, because everybody, the viewers have their episodes, of course, that are their favorites. Was there one or two that really stood out for you, Larry, that even when you see them re-airing on television as they've never come off television, are your personal favorites?
Well, David's going to love this one, of course. And, we know this. Yeah, I think probably my favorite one, and then one that was one of my favorite to do was the Walnut Show.
Yeah.
Where yeah, exactly. Dick had the dream about the alien. Of course, Danny Thomas being on it was just a wonderful special thing for us to have at the time, because Danny was our executive producer and was always there. But to have him as a guest was great, and that was just a fun show to do. And I was, because it's very much out of the norm of what our normal show did. But there was a lot of episodes that I loved, that were fun to do. The show where Never Name a Duck, which was one of my favorites in terms of my performances. The Bird in the Head, Bird in the Head, is that David, right?
Bird in the Head hurts, yes.
Bird in the Head hurts with a woodpecker. And of course, another one of my favorite shows, which I wasn't even in, but it was just one of my favorite episodes, is called The Ghost of A Chance, which was when all the gang went up to a haunted cabin up in the Catskills or something for a retreat, and it was just a really funny episode to watch. So there's several. We go on and on, but just name a few. Yeah,
that one was my idea.
Yeah, I know. We've talked about that. It was a great idea, by the way. It was just a fun show to watch, man. It was like perfect.
And we still don't know how that rocking chair moved, do we?
No.
Or the fire in the fireplace, maybe more importantly, right?
One of the greatest lines from that, though, was at the end when they look at Richard Deacon or Mel, and they go like, "Mel, really?" And he goes, "Anytime I have a chance to torture Buddy, I'm going to take it, and I will never say a word." Something of that. I'm paraphrasing, but it was a great quote.
That is funny. How were you able to still, balance school and everything with it? Did they bring in tutors? Were you going to school, homeschool? How did it work for you, Larry?
Yeah, we had tutors. The state of California, that was their that was their mandate. Mandate was the law, basically. You had to bring a tutor in, and they would tutor me. It was 3 hours a day was what you had to log, and then you had to go through all your courses and show the school district of Los Angeles that you were, taking all the required courses, et cetera, et cetera. And it's lucky, when you're one-on-one with a tutor like that, it's very different. You learn very, very quickly. And so I skipped second. I went from first grade to third grade and skipped second grade because I was, advanced enough, whatever that means, to get in there. So it was good.
And when kids, would see you on television, that must have been an interesting scenario for you, because they would see you on TV and say, "Wait a minute, that's you playing Ritchie." What was that like as far as the response from other kids?
Really mixed. It's an interesting dynamics, because as one of 7 children, and we were in Catholic schools, so I would never be in school at the start of the year, and then I would always end up in there for the last few months, because we would we would stop filming in April, and so May and June I had to go back into the regular classroom school. And honestly, for my younger years, it was just unpleasant. I mean, the kids were not really kind. They were just there was a lot of I guess jealousy is the right word, or a lot of, just they were like, "Oh, he thinks he's so special, and he comes in and he's not here all year, and who does he think he is?" And there was a lot of tough times on that. But conversely, when I got out of my grade school and into my high school, it literally flipped 180 degrees, where my brothers had been in the high school before me. So I was they're 2 years behind them. We were 1, 2, 3 in line there. And it was a whole different experience. It was like the kids were just wonderful and open and welcoming, and they were like so happy to have me there, and it was such a fun time, and it was great. Ritchie's in our class. This is very cool. It was also so a little bit of both as you grow through your childhood and go as you grow up. So
it's really, something. It's quite an experience, one that, a lot of us can't necessarily say that we've had, but, you sort of get through it all. And for you too, Doug, growing up in this world as well with your extraordinary father, who, prolific television producer and writer. What was it like for you as well? To be surrounded by the industry and all of this, growing up in Beverly Hills in California?
Well, first of all, we moved to LA because Dad had gotten an offer to write for the Steve Allen Show, Dad and Bill Persky. And we moved to Laurel Canyon, rented a house actually from the comedian Dick Martin from Laugh-In, long before Laugh-In. This was 1961. And then we moved to Beverly Hills, not for any purpose other than they had great public schools. And a few years, so that was in 61, a couple of years after that, during the Dick Van Dyke Show, actually near the end of it, my parents got divorced. So my sister and I stayed with our mother and went through public school and high school. Our Girl Scout den mother was Debbie Reynolds, as I'm sure people know, when Carrie was there. And so, the day-to-day was a little different for us because, as Dad got, more successful in the Van Dyke Show. And then, after that, he helped Marlo Thomas create That Girl with Bill Persky. Those parties and that socializing at home was not my world. My sister and I were separate. I mean, my classmates were equally, in showbiz, but we didn't think of it that way. It was like our parents could have been architects. Some were doctors, some were lawyers. It wasn't like this was a fancy thing to us. These were just our parents' friends. The most notable thing was that every Christmas, Danny Thomas and his wife, Rosemary, sent everybody a big China crock of port wine cheese, kind of like what you get at Sardi's. And that was like the thing that everybody used to get. But other than that, I wasn't, exposed to it. What was fun was, as a kid growing up, being able, during school vacation and occasionally on show days when the Dick Van Dyke Show would film, would be to go to Desilu Studios and hang out during the day and, sometimes a day or two before, and then watch the dress rehearsal. And then everybody took a dinner break. And then there was Danny Thomas had hired a guy named Abdullah to set up a schwitz, an old-fashioned steam room, which was white tile, and Abdullah wore a white shirt and a towel. Yeah. And we would, take a steam and then, I dress in my little blue blazer and my shirt and tie and, watch the filming of the show. And so that was really fun. And I got to learn a lot about making film, and I learned to edit film from Bud Molen, who edited the show. And I still enjoy editing, on video now, but still that process. And I have a Mitchell camera, like the big cameras that used to be used to film the Dick Van Dyke Show. So I learned a lot about that end of show business from watching. And I learned a lot about story. And one of my joys as a Broadway producer is working with writers and helping to watch the same way that Dad and Billy and Carl and Sheldon Leonard and Danny Thomas all made this family and made everybody feel a part of the family and made them feel loved and supported them in their creativity, and a lot about story, which, Dave can talk about too, with Carl's wisdom about why the Dick Van Dyke Show still is funny 60 years on. So
wait, Doug, you have a Mitchell camera still?
I have a Mitchell. Yeah, I'll show you.
Oh my God, that's a relic. That's a quite. Oh wow.
I bought it not too long ago. I bought it when I was putting together the Dick Van Dyke Show on DVD, because I wanted to. That was when I had the idea of making a Dick Van Dyke Show museum.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
And these were the cameras that filmed everything from Citizen Kane to Star Trek. There were 358 of them made. They weigh about 160 pounds. And so I wanted to create a Dick Van Dyke Show museum in New Rochelle, New York, which is where Carl and Estelle Reiner lived and where the Petries hypothetically were from. So that's still something I would like to do. But yeah, I have the camera and it shoots film. So,
Jim, for your audience, again, Doug just explained it, but for your audience, that's quite a piece of history from television, from the entertainment business in general, really. So that's kind of, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry, I just wanted to.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And David, for those that are watching, you have been I thought I was a huge fan of the series. You're like the ultimate. You've just really made this your life's calling in so many different ways. Remind our viewers who've seen when you were on before, or the new folks watching, where did this real incredible enthusiasm and passion for everything Dick Van Dyke Show start for you?
Well, I think I was predestined, given the fact that my initials are the same as Dick's, right? DVD. I'm Carl called me the other DVD, if you will. But I just think growing up, I was just 1 year old when the show debuted, so I'm sure I didn't remember it in its original airing, but it remained on the air in syndication on the Dick Van Dyke Daytime Show in the mornings and things, and I just became intrigued. When you think about the cast ensemble that was put together for the show, it's pretty amazing. With Dick as the key player, and how Mary came to the opportunity and rose to the occasion. The showbiz veterans of Rose Marie and Maury there, and the guiding principles and leadership of Carl, who just created an environment to foster creativity. And so I was hooked, right? And as Douglas was saying, and Larry too, part of the show still holds up because the stories are about things we all can relate to. There weren't really, someone made an observation. There weren't really a lot of strict jokes on the Van Dyke Show, right? Maury might have a joke in the office as part of the banter about the Alan Brady Show, but it was the situations that we could all relate to and that were funny, and that's where the humor came from.
Yeah, well, Carl always said to all the writers, and the writers included Gary Marshall, who, great Happy Days, Vernon Shirley, and Pretty Woman. He said, write what happens at home. Yeah. They never had Ritchie Petrie say anything precocious and grown up like the kid on 2.5 Men, who is not funny to me. When Ritchie Petrie would speak, it's because kids are naturally silly. Art Linkletter has a show called Kids Say the Darndest Things. And anybody who has kids knows your kid will just come up with something that is just brilliant. And Carl was really insistent that the writers stick to that and write what happens at home, because life is like a situation comedy, which is a song from the Dick Van Dyke and the Other Woman special. And it's really true. And that's, I think, why, unlike some shows that have gotten dated, he also said, don't write anything about current events.
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So Larry, I think it would be interesting for fans to know what did you do your homework on? What papers did you use to do your homework assignment?
God, I wish too stolen. Old scripts. I mean, my mom would take the scripts that we had because they were just plenty, and 7 kids, and they'd say, here's your scratch paper to do your homework. Well, little did we know that if we would have kept those scripts, oh my goodness, I still have some, and I did keep a number of them. But yep, that was our homework paper. Yep.
Pretty interesting, right there, Jim.
It really, really is. What are some things, David, that you've learned about the Dick Van Dyke Show that surprised you as you developed your research?
I think the key, and Larry, I'm sure will concur, and Doug as well, is that the success of the show was driven by, I think, again, Carl fostering this creative environment, right? But many guest stars, almost every guest star commented like their time on the Dick Van Dyke Show was unlike any other guest spots that they had done, in that they felt extremely welcomed to the set. They were asked to contribute. They were asked to collaborate. They would pitch in ideas and they would stay in the show, right? And they were meant to feel like insiders, even though they were only there for 1 week or a few days making a guest spot. And I think, Carl's brilliance to just harness what was there in front of them, get the best of what we could have, and put together the best product that they could collaboratively.
It's interesting. I don't really know if we could ever speak enough to how brilliant Carl, I mean, in everywhere. I mean, look, Carl Reiner's career, just forget about the Dick Van Dyke Show. Everything else was just amazing. But that particular thing, which was a very special part of his lifetime, because it was his life base. It was based on his life as a writer for your shows. And when you take Carl and then you throw in the people that were, involved, Sheldon Leonard and Danny, and then you get the cast of Dick and Mary and Rose and Maury and then Sam and Bill and Belson and Marshall. And, like Doug was saying, all these amazing writers that would ask to come write for the Dick Van Dyke Show. I mean, it was such a wonderful experience because Carl made it that way. I don't know if we can really speak to just how amazing Carl Reiner really was and what he really meant to us, obviously. And then, of course, to the show and to people in general. I mean, he was truly a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful human being and a brilliant man.
Really?
That's
Yeah.
true.
On
And I would
so
just
many
add,
different
Carl,
levels, absolutely.
I was going to say, for 20 years, I published a newsletter about the show based upon the Walnut episode called The Walnut Times, right? And the part of the success of that was Carl's support and endorsement, right? Carl would call the house and say, "When is the next issue coming? I haven't gotten one. You didn't cut me out, did you?" And no, Carl, it's not ready yet. It's coming, right? But and I'd send it and I'd get feedback. Oh, I'd like the story on so and so, or I never knew about so and so. I think that was sort of part of what became fun for me was I would uncover things that Carl didn't necessarily know about. Some behind the scenes nugget or whatever. And then he might have a story to tell me that helped flesh out a little bit more of what I had uncovered. But Carl's the demeanor of the man, right? There was no one more generous to me with regard to my passion for the show than Carl Reiner. He was just tremendous.
And to show a little ego Carl had in terms of how good he was. He was a man that would listen to other people. I mean, because the Dick Van Dyke Show would not have been there if it wasn't for Sheldon Leonard, who Carl did the pilot. It wasn't a great pilot, and was humble enough and smart enough to listen to Sheldon Leonard to say, "Look, this is a wonderful idea. Let me recast this with people that are better than you to play." And I mean, and this is how, again, how wonderful Carl was to go like, "Yeah, you're right. Let's do it." And that's the reason the Dick Van Dyke Show was made, because Sheldon Leonard was smart enough and Carl Reiner was an amazing person. And like I said, I'm not an egomaniac to listen to people and take advice and make something wonderful.
A couple of people have also asked, Larry, if you stayed in touch over the years with Mary Tyler Moore and still with Dick Van Dyke. Have you had those opportunities? Of course, Mary not here, but through the years, did you get a chance to stay in touch with some of the other cast members? And do you stay in touch with Dick?
Well, we would see each other, like it's like our business is very, and Doug will tell you this because Broadway's is the very same way. You do a production, you become a family, and then everybody goes their own way and they go back and they do their other jobs and they move on. So it wasn't like you would see each other all that often. We would see each other in different, interview shows or not reunion shows, but we would do like, get-togethers for the cast and things like that. I guess the person I stayed the closest to and talked to the most over the years was Rosemary, believe it or not, because we had a very special connection, Rose and I did. And we're both Italians, and we had that fire in us. And she was kind of like another mom to me in a lot of ways, as Mary was as well, too. Don't get me wrong. Mary was so very much, too. And then we would stay in touch with each other just through communications here and there when people would want to ask us interviews or whatever, things like that. But Rose and I would talk quite a bit, and we were close. Our families were very close. And now today, I mean, I'll catch Dick here and there on social media and might make a comment back and forth, to him and get like a response to him and his wife. But we don't really see each other that much anymore. And we don't, although an interesting fact, and this is something I think you'll also appreciate. When we did the Dick Van Dyke Revisited show, which was the 168th episode or 9th episode, according to Carl, David would have more info on that. But and we hadn't been together for years and years and years, and we all got together to read the script at the read around for the table. And even though we hadn't been together for 40 something years and done anything for 40 something years, it was like time had stood still and nothing had changed, and everybody literally just got into their character, and the family came together again, and it just was like everything clicked, like nothing had ever changed. And I think that speaks to the beauty of why the show, has lasted, does last, and is a tribute to all the people who are involved with it, really.
That is really beautiful. The fact that everybody sort of picked up where they left off, how does it feel for you, Larry? And only, I guess you could really answer it is, it's been on for so long. I mean, the majority, obviously, of your life and the majority of many people's lives, and it's still there and it's still on and it's still talked about. It's still revered. It's held in high, in good standing and high standing as far as the quality of the writing, the production, and even the fact that it captured a certain time period. I know they mention a lot Camelot and compare it to JFK and Jacqueline Kennedy and just that whole time period, suburban, America. For me, when I watch the Dick Van Dyke Show, I tap into it so much because growing up, in the New York area, out east on Long Island, that is kind of the way the scenario was. That was, the neighbors dropped by and just the whole thing is very identifiable for me, even the way the sets look and the way everybody was dressed. It just, I could plug into that and saying, I feel like I'm watching, my own childhood. And for you, it must be an interesting feeling that here is this show that is still on all these years later and still beloved and revered. And it's something that you had a rare and, exquisite opportunity to be a part of. What's the feeling like when all of a sudden, you turn on and you just start hearing dun, 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 dun. It's like, it's got to be pretty cool.
It is cool. I mean, listen, I mean, I think that everybody will tell you this, and Rosemary said this, and Maury and all of us at one point of our lives had, when we started this show, nobody ever knew it would become what it would become. And we would still be sitting here, 60 something years later, talking about probably one of the best shows ever produced, put on TV, Smithsonian Institute, literally a part of American history. So you didn't know that, and you didn't think about that, and then you just kind of went about your business and did your thing. And even as the show ended, and I went through my school years in high school and college, et cetera, I never really thought. It was just part of what I did. To me, it was just like, and people would come to me and said, "Oh my God, you're Larry Mathews. Oh my God," which is just amazing. I'm like, well, thank you, and I appreciate it, and I really, it means a lot to me, but I was just having a good time as a child and just really enjoying the people that I was with. That became, like I said, my other family. And so, yeah, it's just, in a way, it still kind of boggles my mind, really. It just it's hard to wrap my head around sometimes that here we are, like I said, 62 years later, having these wonderful shows that you host and people want to do, and that you still want to give it the life and continue the legacy that it really deserves, and everybody that was involved with it deserves.
You too, you were able to make a transition once the show ended. Tell the folks watching about, Larry Mathews beyond the Dick Van Dyke Show, some of the things that you were able to do right after they said that final wrap. A lot of times, here you are on this iconic television series, and it comes to an end, and a lot of child stars don't always do so well after. Either they're typecast in that role for years and years, if forever, And then sometimes they go down different roads that don't lead them in positive directions. And you've been able to, map things out for you in a good way. What was it like after the Dick Van Dyke Show had ended?
You can leave out witness protection. I don't think.
or maybe that 2 weeks in jail. But anyway, other than that, everything was great. Hey,
and the chipmunks and cream cheese. Stay away.
Listen, we're all kids.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect. We all had our issues. What can I tell you? But I think that it was, again, for me, being from a very I have to give a credit to my parents and my family for basically keeping perspective through the whole thing, and then keeping perspective through life after it was done, and as I went on to do other things in my life. So, playing sports, going to high school, hanging out with my brothers in high school, and going to college, went to UCLA, and just, being in a fraternity and just doing things that most, young people do as they grow up and go through college and things like that. It was, again, I thought about it, but I just thought about also making my life what it was. And I was, and I hopefully still, am very successful in working behind the scenes in the entertainment business. I went to do some acting again when I got out of college, and I was kind of discouraged because, here I am thinking to myself, well, I'm from an Emmy award-winning show, and I'm this and I'm that, and they're going to want me to be on the show right away. And no, you walked in and there was 50 people in the interview, and it was a cattle call, and it was depressing, and it was like, oh man, who needs this? So I turned my focus to the behind the scenes, which I always loved. I remember when John Rich was directing, I would always be asking questions. Jerry Paris as well, asking questions about why they were doing this, what they were shooting. It just got to be very, I wanted to learn that, right?
Yeah.
And so I learned that, and I used it, and I went into production and post-production, and that's where I spent basically my entire career, making, doing very well in the entertainment business, but basically behind the scenes, so, and that's kind of what I did until I retired, a couple of years ago, and still am involved in certain ways. I consult still with some of the people that I worked with in post-production, and they still, I still have a good hand in it. And then we do wonderful things like this because of people like you who are still, like I said, wanting to give us the opportunity to continue the legacy. And, it just goes on. It's kind of a special place to be.
Did you appreciate that? Did you also do all those, Comic Cons and TV conventions and all those things through the years as well, like a lot of people do?
I mean, I've done certain autograph shows over the years. I don't think I've done as much as, some of the other, people have done, child stars and things like that. I don't know why. Because I was successful in my business, and I didn't really think that I had to. I enjoyed it. It was fun when I did it. I enjoyed seeing the fans. I enjoyed seeing the other people that were in our business. I still do when I get the occasion to do it. But, a number, but not, I would say, like all the time, like you see a lot of these, like Star Trek conventions where they're always there, the same people are always there. I did it because I enjoyed it. And I remember one time Rosemary and I were together at one, and it was just one of the most fun times I had, just hanging out with Rose and talking all day and signing autographs and meeting people and discussing the show and talking to people about it. It was just, it's a fun thing to do.
What was it like to be in the Lucy, the Desi Luce studios, and with the other shows that were right nearby being produced? And did you get a chance to bump into Lucille Ball or Desi Arnaz? Did they come by the set at all, or any of the folks?
Lucy would come by every so often, just to make sure her property was being protected. But other than that, I'm not sure it's the other reason. But on our lot, at the same time, when we started our show, Danny Thomas was shooting Make Room for Daddy, or the Danny Thomas Show, next to us. So I got to know, Angela Cartwright well, and Rusty Hamer very well. And then down the lot, Andrew Griffith was shooting. So, Ron Howard and I, we played Little League together in Burbank, and so we know them. And I Spy was on that lot, and so was the Joey Bishop show, and so Gomer Pyle eventually. So all this stuff, we were kind of all in the same lot. So we all got to know each other and kind of like spend a little time. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, Bill Cosby taught me how to throw football when I was a kid. So,
Did he really?
Yeah. And, not sure I want to bring that up, but anyway, so it's okay. But, and Robert Culp, and we get out there and playing Joey Bishop, and Doug mentioned earlier about Abdul, who was the masseuse and steam guy and everything we had. And it was just, there was a lot of going on in our lot, and everybody kind of knew each other, and we were all kind of interfacing with each other as we were all doing our separate shows.
Yeah. Hogan's Heroes. We used to climb down the bunk that would supposedly go into the tunnels that only went about 2 feet under the stadium. We just lost Robert Clary.
Yeah. That was
right.
Yeah. It was a great playground. You gotta admit, it was both behind the scenes and just the people, the talented people. I had a crush on Lisa Gerritsen, who was doing My World and Welcome to It later when That Girl was being filmed. And yeah.
So it was lunchtime and you went to Hal's Cafe. What was it like at Hal's?
Oh, Larry.
I
never got sick.
I was sick. It was like, it was literally like a parade of who's going in. I mean, just like, and everybody from the show. And I think it speaks to what our era was in terms of that era where you mentioned it earlier. I think Jim or somebody did that. We came from a different place in that world, in that era of entertainment. People weren't there to be famous. They were there because they loved what they did. Mm-hmm. It wasn't somebody that was just there because they thought, oh, I'm going to be a big star, or I can make a ton of money. Unlike nowadays, where really that's, I think, a motivating factor for a lot of entertainment. Yeah. People were there because they loved what they did. It was a passion. It was their life, their heart. And I mean, to sit in house and watch the people come in and out of there. I mean, remember, I don't know, you remember when the Dodgers were on the show? We had like a lot of the Dodgers on the show.
I forgot.
And we had them, they were all in the cafeteria. I got to meet, Maury Wills and,
John Drysdale.
Oh my God, Drysdale and Bill Scour and all these great Dodgers. So, I mean, like as a kid, as a Dodger fan, I'm like, oh my God, this is great. I get to meet my Dodger fans. So
and Dad and Billy in 1957 wrote a song called Let's Keep the Dodgers in Brooklyn.
That's right.
Wrote to hopefully keep the Dodgers from moving to LA, but as it turned out, it worked. Yeah, for people who don't know, every studio has a dining room, a commissary. And
my father grew up a big Dodger fan, Brooklyn Dodger fan, growing up in New York. Yeah.
So most of the studio commissaries are not accessible to the public. If you go on the Universal Studios tour, I think you can eat in one of the dining rooms. But Hal's was called. Hal was the guy who owned it, and he had a greasy apron. And it was called Hal's Diner for Stars.
Yes, he did.
And you could get to it from on the lot, but there was also a door next to the front gate of Desilu Cahuenga, 846 North Cahuenga. If you live in LA, you can drive by it now. It's called Red Studios. It's owned by the people that make Red cinema cameras. And the public could just walk in and sit down at a table, and Carl and Dick and Larry and everybody would be at the neck, all these booths. And they had sandwiches named after people, like most delicatessens did. And my favorite was always roast beef on a Kaiser roll with Russian dressing and coleslaw. And when you went up to pay your bill, they had a little reach-in freezer under the counter. And Carl had them keep Milky Ways. So I developed my love for frozen Milky Ways and later frozen Almond Joy bars from that freezer, where if you have never tried it, keep them in the freezer. That's a Carl Reiner special.
Amazing.
So it was unique in that the public, as big as these stars were, and certainly there were big movie stars in that era, but somehow it was more accessible and people weren't as crazy and there weren't so many paparazzi that, you couldn't have a place like this where someone could just come in off the street in Hollywood and have a turkey sandwich.
Right.
To Larry Mathews.
I mean, I remember, and I remember it was funny. You would come in there and on a few occasions, there would be Carl and Mel Brooks having lunch together at the commissary because they were collaborating on something, but it was lunchtime and Carl would be over there and Mel would come over there. And it was like, oh my God, it was quite the amazing environment. It was a blast. It really was.
What are some other cool things that happened along the way for you, Larry, that might not have happened if the, exposure on the Dick Van Dyke Show or being a part of that whole community didn't exist? Some other fun things maybe on set, maybe some interesting moments.
You mean on the set? We say on the set.
Yeah. The set.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to, I guess, put my finger on, any really certain specific things that I think in general, just the whole carrying on of the show and just, again, as I said, before, my parents kept a really big perspective on things. So I didn't really think of it as I was in some kind of like iconic television show. But I think as I went through high school, the kids who would, really enjoy being with me and love hearing stories about it and really kind of wanting to know more about what it was like to be with Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore and it's, the whole gang. And that was really fun. And then I really enjoyed when people would call up and say, look, I'm so-and-so from this show in LA. I'd like to interview you guys. Are you available as a cast? And just like kind of reminisce and get together with people and do things like that. And then when we would like kind of do like appearances all together, it was just so wonderful to see the whole gang again. One of the greatest moments that really I think we did was when Dick got his star on Hollywood Boulevard and they had a big ceremony for it. And I was there and I have a picture of Carl, Sheldon, Dick, Maury Amsterdam, and myself all around the star on Hollywood Boulevard. And that's such a special picture to me because think of who's in there. And, I remember going through the ceremony there and then they had a lunch after lunch at the Roosevelt Hotel, a famous hotel in Hollywood. And I was sitting next to Maury, and Maury was up in his years by then. And, I think he passed not too far long after that. But Maury was Maury. He was, buddy. We're at lunch and somebody say something and he'd have a zinger. He'd come back with a one-liner and he'd have this joke and he'd have that joke. And he was just always going on and enjoying it and just the most genuine person in the world with it. And that was such a special day for me. I'll never forget that, especially hanging out with Maury, before he passed.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, to have those, again, experiences and memories like that are extraordinary. Doug, I imagine the same for you. There's a lot of wonderful stories and people you met and experiences early on as a kid being surrounded by it all.
To have any memories at this point, at this age, is
a plus.
I'm sorry, it's genetic.
Yeah,
I mean, the biggest. I went. There's an episode called "Draw Me a Pair" where Rob goes to art class and his art teacher develops a crush on him and gets very flirtatious. Mm-hmm. And the art teacher, Valerie, what was her last name, Larry or David? Anyway, she was played by a beautiful actress named Ina Balin. And I think I was 6 or 7 years old, and I developed such a crush on her. And I was there for the show day. And some point in the afternoon, she planted a kiss on my cheek, and I was just the happiest little boy you could ever imagine. And she became quite an activist against the Vietnam War, and sadly died fairly young. But that was a nice thing, and just the experience of watching and learning all the behind the scenes stuff was really the best fun for me. And then listening, kind of, I think I subliminally picked up my sense of good writing from seeing those scripts and listening to those story meetings, being able to sit, once a week, as with almost every sitcom, they would sit around a folding table, and you've probably seen pictures, and read through the script and give notes and fix. And sometimes everybody would finish and say, "Oh my God, that's terrible." But a week later, it would be a fabulous episode because you had this cadre of geniuses, writers and directors and actors, all contributing. So it was great to watch that process. And this is Dad's Emmy, not that one, but this is
the Emmy. Yeah,
this is Dad's Emmy for Coast to Coast Big Mouth.
Oh, one of the greatest shows.
And this is the episode. This is the episode where Laura blabs that Alan Brady wears a toupee. And that was really,
I think Larry said, what a great episode, right?
One of the greatest ever. That's one of my favorites too. She was, oh my God.
She was perfect.
And I have to say something which I haven't said too, and this is not just because Doug's here, but Sam and I always had a very special relationship as well. Sam always, I felt like I was a son to him as well. There's just something about him, of all the writers, and they were all great, don't get me wrong, but I always felt that Sam just would always have a special feeling for me and I for him. And even after we didn't work together and we would see each other years pass as things gone on at different events and things, he would always come up to me and just give me a hug and always want to know how I was and always want to know what I was doing, and just a genuine interest in me. I loved Sam a lot. He was a very special man during that time as well.
And he was he was born in 28. So he was, a very young man. I'm looking for a good picture of him back in that day, not as the gunslinger, but in one of the episodes. But
yes,
he loved that time. It was them.
Yeah.
There
Bill
you
Persky.
go.
Billy's still. My dad died in 2011, but Persky is still around and mentoring young writers, and he's involved in a thing called Visible Ink that helps cancer patients write their stories. So he gives back a lot too. So yeah, that kind of collaboration is great. And the Mary Tyler Moore Show, MASH, all of these shows that had really great writing follow that great model that of collaboration. That it's really special.
We've had a number of folks come in who have worked on the music for a lot of the iconic shows, the session players and the composers and all the others. And we've had these conversations about how jingles are pretty much gone, and how especially with television, you don't hear themes anymore that you can recognize that sort of put you in that mood of what's coming up. If there's any themes at all or credits running. And the Dick Van Dyke Show theme, one of the most recognizable themes, on the planet.
That's my ringtone. There are some unauthorized.
I specifically dressed, in very Dick Van Dyke style, right?
Easy.
Look for the one that says Sutton Square Entertainment.
Sutton Square Entertainment.
No, that theme song was written by Earl Hagen, who wrote the theme song for Make Room for Daddy, I Spy, Mod Squad,
That Girl,
Gomer Pyle, and the Andy Griffith Show. That's actually Earl Hagen whistling.
The Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we should bring that back. There should be more identifiable television themes, and jingles and all that. It just created a warmth, a familiarity.
Yeah.
There's nothing now. Now it's just a boing, and that's it. If there's even that,
well, the other thing also is that the Dick Van Dyke Show was a half-hour show. I think the actual episode every week was 26 minutes, and there were like 3.5 minutes of commercials and bumpers and things like that. Now an episode is 17 minutes, 19 minutes. There's barely enough time to have a character have an arc and tell a story. I don't know how they do it.
On some of the nostalgic channels, the not Antenna TV, but some of the streaming services, they actually have, and I'm like, are you kidding? No way. They have an option where you can skip intro. Where you don't hear the intro at all, it just goes right into the show. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Forget that. I want to hear the song. I want to feel it. It's
You know,
it's really important, and
it's
we've gone
funny
away from
because
that.
I've said this to David, and it's kind of one of my pet peeves, and it bothers me when I watch the reruns of the Dick Van Dyke Show. Tonight it'll be on Me TV, by the way. I don't know, it's 11 o'clock our time, so who knows? When I watch that and they roll the credits and they cut the damn theme song through the credits, and it really it bothers me. And
Can you even see the critics? They usually shrink them.
They shrink them
or squeeze them,
and then they cut the theme song. I was like, guys, I don't know. It's just one of my back to
yes. Oh, I agree 100%. 100%, I agree. They'll either squeeze them in a box and then start the next episode of whatever the show is. It could be another episode of Dick Van Dyke or I Dream of Jeannie or whatever it is. They'll squeeze it. You don't even hear that. You just see the credits going. You don't hear the theme, and they're already going into the next episode.
I don't know why the unions allow the credits to be run so fast that they can't be read.
I'd agree.
Oh, today,
credit is a huge thing. The Writers Guild, all the unions should fight for it. The first show I worked on my own in the business was as an assistant to the producer on Hawaii Five-0, which had another really great theme song. And the end credits were like 3 times as long, and they had different versions over the years that would go on if they had more and more credits. It was great. It was a great piece of music, and they bring 80 musicians in once a year to record these big theme songs. And they were written by Henry Mancini, Walter Scharf, Fred Steiner, Ernest Gold, people who wrote theme movies.
Nelson Riddle and Frank Duvall and
John Williams wrote a lot of TV theme songs before he hooked up with that Spielberg fella.
We're all Lost in Space.
Lost in Space was
Lost in Space.
His credit is on that is actually Johnny Williams.
Johnny Williams. Yeah. Lalo Schifrin, Mission Impossible.
In Mannix.
Yep. Yeah. I know.
Yeah,
we should bring back a lot of.
We had Angela Cartwright on recently. She was,
another big crush.
I think we should start
well, and it's even on the Tony Awards, a musical needs music, lyrics, and choreography to be a musical. They do not air any of those Tony Awards on the live broadcast. They are taped in the pre-show and announced. But, I mean, can you imagine, and I hope that we return to recognizing composers and lyricists and choreographers the same way we recognize the playwrights. They're just as important. Can you imagine, the Jerome Robbins or Michael Bennett as choreographers not being recognized with the same level of importance? So I think we're so focused on quick and speed and Snapchat and all of that. But, these are really great artists that make everything that we love. And it's the reason they last and love is because they're so well crafted.
David, you might, I'm sorry, but you might know the answer to this, because on the Dick Van Dyke Show, there were several numbers that were done, Dick and Mary and Rose and Maury and everything, and choreographed, like Doug was just saying.
Yep.
Do you remember who our choreographers were that worked with that, David?
Well, I know that a number of them were choreographed by Sylvia Lewis, John Rich's first wife, right? Sylvia was in the one episode, doodly doot, why don't you join the group? It's better than being a party poop, right? And I know she choreographed I Am a Fine Musician. So I wouldn't be surprised if she was involved in other things too, Larry, but I'm not sure, like you don't see ever a credit at the end of the show of who the choreographers were.
Right.
So,
go
ahead.
To Doug's point, it's a huge part of entertainment. It's like I've always said to people, it's like, especially working in post-production all my life, right? And Doug will appreciate this, especially David, you too, because you've done the documentary and you know so much about. Okay, so you do a scene, you shoot it, you go into editing, you edit it, blah, 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 and it's great, and you time it out. But until the music comes in, until everything comes in with the music, the scene really doesn't, it's nothing. I mean, you need all the elements to make it what it is, really. And if we do this all the time, because we would be watching, cuts of shows as we were doing post-production and watching them, and you're like, okay, we got it. And then when you put the music and the sound and the music and sound effects into it, it's like, oh my God, this is just came to life like you can't even imagine. It's just, it's a big part of it that people don't realize. It's subliminal as an audience. They don't really get that sometimes, but you have to understand that it's there, and it's what makes the audience grab and, want to watch what they're watching and hear what they're hearing.
Well, and maybe that's a good time to segue briefly into laughter and laugh tracks and live audiences, because the Dick Van Dyke Show was filmed before a live audience, big audience, same type of studio audience as I Love Lucy, same building, next door, right? They were on 6, we were on 8. But, occasionally laughs would be sweetened. There was a guy named Charlie Douglas who had this secret machine with actual tape recordings of laughs. Yeah. And it was like a typewriter keyboard, and he would go into the mixing room afterwards if a laugh needed, or a transition, or there was a cut made that needed to segue. And then some shows like That Girl were shot single camera.
Right.
So you had like Seinfeld was shot 4 camera live audience, but some are still, and you have to balance that laughter so it doesn't sound forced and it sounds like it were coming from a live audience. And that's the genius of great people in post-production like Larry and the artists who have the laugh machines that know how to make it sound really natural and organic.
Yeah, the laughs that Douglas got, I think Charlie Douglas got, were from I Love Lucy, weren't they?
You could hear some of the same laughs, especially the female laughs, or just certain ones you hear often in Lucy that you've heard in Dick Van Dyke, and some other ones of the time, which was always interesting because they were very funny laughs that they captured, the sound of the laugh.
Well, Bill Persky, if you've ever been to the filming of a sitcom, somebody warms up the audience and does a little patter and warms them. And when Bill Persky would do it, the studio was like bleachers in a gymnasium, and there were these speakers over people's heads so they could hear music, and
right.
Everything was live. They weren't amplified like in the theater today. But Bill Persky would also he had 2 jokes. One was, those, if you're not careful, those will spell sleeping gas and you'll be forced to fall asleep. And the other one, he says, very important, research has shown that if you hold back a laugh, it goes down and immediately spreads your hips.
and suddenly, yeah, exactly, like you heard Larry just do. That's exactly what the response would be, and they would capture that sound.
Recognizable, though. Carl and Mel Brooks did The 2,000-Year-Old Man, which was an iconic record album, and then they did a sequel called The 2,000-Year-Old Man in 2000. I don't know where they recorded that, but the loudest, most profound laugh I always recognize listening to that is that of Carl's nephew and manager, George Shapiro, who later became the producer of Seinfeld. And it's very clearly...
Wasn't there... on I Love Lucy, too, I think they said that recorded is Lucy's mother in some of it. I think you can hear her mother. Yeah, there's a distinct laugh. I'm not sure which one it is, but you hear it often in the I Love Lucy episodes, and it's Lucy's mother.
Because you talk to Lucy Arnaz, her grandmother was not a laughing person.
Right.
So you watch those documentaries. If you watch Amy Poehler's documentary, what was Lucille's mother's name? She was not an effusive woman.
Yeah.
Dee
Dee.
Yeah. Dee.
So I'm told that at the Dick Van Dyke Show, Barbara Bain, who was a good friend of Carl's, often attended the filmings, and supposedly you can hear her, or she can recognize herself on a number of episodes where she was just sitting in the audience as a participant to enjoy the show on some of the laughs. So.
Wow. Larry, was there ever a show that was on during that time or even beyond where you would love to have been a part of that cast with either those kids or those people through the years?
Star Trek. I mean, you know,
that's a good one.
Did you ever
I
go
want to be
over
on the Enterprise, man? I want to be like, you know.
Did you ever go over to the Gower lot? I remember Dad took me over to the Desilu Gower lot, and I got to sit in Captain Kirk's chair one day.
Yeah, we'd stopped filming by then because they were on, you know, they started after we'd stopped, but I actually got a chance to go into the Gower lot and do the set, which was great. But I guess back to some of the times, you know, the shows that were on with us, I mean, I can't really remember. I mean, there were so many fun shows, but, and I just thought it'd be fun to be a part. I mean, I you know, listen, working next to Danny and Rusty and Angela and Marge and the whole Danny Thomas show, I always loved going over there and hanging out with them. Angela was a doll. I mean, Angela and I, we knew each other pretty well, and she's also grew up in Burbank where I grew up, and we always had a good time. And so, but I don't know if there's any shows I wanted to be a part of. Was again when I was a kid growing up and doing the show. You know, we were strict Italians. You know, you're going to bed at this time. You can't watch this show. You can't do that. This is not good enough for you to watch. This is good enough for you to watch, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know.
Was Dick Van Dyke like a father figure in a way to you on set, and just the way he's so warm and natural and incredibly funny and rubber band like? was he like that in a way? Did he offer sort of those characteristics of a dad sort of looking out for you, and Mary looking out for you on set as well?
Yeah, both of them actually did, especially when we were doing scenes, and you know, they could see me as we're rehearsing and stuff, and they would kind of look at me and say, you know, maybe like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I mean, John Rich was really, you know, the driving force, obviously, when it came to directing, which really molded me in a lot of ways of what I did. But Mary and Dick were always just there, and I always felt like I could look at them, or they could look at me, or we could play off each other, and they would be there to help me, to get me through whatever I needed to get through, and be just the natural, and be as good as I could be. Mary was amazing. Dick is incredible. Both of them, yeah, father, mother figures, you know, away from home. And you know, again, I'm so lucky that I was able to be part of that, and, you know, work with two of the greatest people, you know, ever in the history of our business.
What was it like slipping into the bunny suit? That must have been fun.
I don't remember much, but if I remember correctly, I don't think I was really that enamored by it. I think I was like, like, all right, fine. I don't know. Put this
you still wear that when you watch The Christmas Story, right, Larry?
I still have the ears. No, I'm just.
Yeah, let me ask this, Jim, of Larry. So a couple of things that maybe you could recall, if you can remember, is tell fans how it is that they got the woodpecker to peck at your head, number one. And number two, when you dyed your hands for your storm cloud outfit, what really did you put your hands in?
So the woodpecker thing, the whole premise of the show was that the woodpecker kept attacking Ritchie because it wanted his hair to build a nest. And so when that all finally came out at the end, I was like, oh, then here, woodpecker, have some of my hair, which I had at the time. Anyway, and so the scene was the woodpecker's in a cage, and I lean over so the woodpecker can take some of my hair. Well, they had to put a worm on my head so the woodpecker would actually peck my head and actually get something to eat out of there. And I was just like, I'm such a little germaphobe. I was just like, no, God, how dare you? I can't put a worm. It's disgusting. I don't want a worm on my head, blah, blah, blah. And my mom had to talk me out of it. And Dick, I remember Dick and Mary especially was very like, don't worry, Larry, it's going to be fine. Just for a second. You won't even feel anything. And I'm like, okay. And sure enough, it was. And it was fine. And I did it. And the incident where we dyed our hands, it was literally just like a mixed like vegetable dye, basically put it into.
Like Easter egg dye.
Yeah, Easter egg dye. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So was it a dog to get off?
No, it was easy to get off, really, but it was, but you know, it was funny because I remember things you do as a kid, but you don't really, right? I thought it was so cool that my hands were dyed that way that I didn't want to wash them for like 3 days.
Yes.
Like, she goes, Larry, you got my mother. You got to wash your hands. No, I want to keep them on for a couple of days. It looks really cool, doesn't it? And of course, the funny thing is the whole premise of that show was that they couldn't get the dye off, and then Rob went to the NCAA, NAACP kind of thing where they got the award, and had to be embarrassed by taking off his gloves and showing his hands had been dyed black, and that was so funny.
You think we could even do that today?
No, you could. Oh God, no. I don't think you could do. No. It's the good thing about the Dick Van Dyke Show is literally 99% of those episodes. Yes, you could do today because that was how good it was, really. And we said this earlier, and Carl, being such a genius, he never wanted anything to be time stamped. He wanted it to be real, which is what Doug referred to when they would come to the writers at the beginning of the year and say, what happened to you this year, Sam? What happened to you this year, Bill, when we were off? What stories do you guys have to tell? What stories do we can make into a story for the Petries? And that was part of it. And then also that Carl never wanted to put any kind of like time frame on it so it would be timeless, which was genius, because if you look at some great shows, Murphy Brown, but they were all political or timely or kind of commenting on current event type shows that if you really don't know those events, it might not mean as much to you, say years later watching it, as when you watch a Dick Van Dyke Show and you see just family normal incidents and events that happen over and over that you can relate to no matter how young you are or old you are.
It's really amazing. We have a little clip here that's actually a little trailer that David had sent, which is the celebration of the 60th anniversary of the Dick Van Dyke Show. And if you haven't had a chance to see that, gang, you really, really should. It's extraordinary. Wonderful interviews in there and archival footage. We'll take a look at that and be back with our incredible guests, Larry Mathews, Douglas Denoff, and David Van Deusen here on the Jim Masters Show Live series. Take a look at this.
When people ask me what am I most proud of, but I think the Dick Van Dyke Show would be, I was writing about what I knew about the home life of somebody who worked on television.
That show has meant a lot to me and to a lot of people. We knew we had something good. Nobody thought it would wind up being a classic like it is.
Everyone was a treasured week working with the production people and the prop people, to say nothing of the actors. We were a real family.
That was a lucky break for me, being with such talented people. They were just great. It sounds kind of cliche to say we were like a happy family, but we really were.
The television viewing public has come to recognize that this is an exceptional group of talent.
It's still the finest, funniest 5 years of my life.
What was that like putting that together, David? And congratulations on it.
Thank you.
It's an extraordinary special.
It was a year and a half of true love for the show, to go back to so many involved. I'm sort of Larry's age and Doug's age, right? I'm sort of the age of the second generation, if you will, of the Dick Van Dyke Show family. And through my publication for 20 years, got to make friends with so many from the show who sort of embraced me and my passion, which is a real thrill for me, right? And then my interviews with many of the folks were sort of like your show, Jim, and they were very conversational, right? But people were thrilled to share their memories, which were just as vivid 60 years later as they were back in the time, right? And it was just pure joy for me to be able to collect everything and sort of put it together, to share my love for the show and celebrate its 60th anniversary, right?
It's like a definitive look at it. Yeah.
I have to jump in, Jim, and say something to David and as a kudos. Yes, you said it. If all your listeners or whoever's out there listening have not seen us, you must watch it if you're a Dick Van Dyke Show fan. It is absolutely an absolutely phenomenal piece of work, an artwork that David put together. And I remember when he gave me the link to watch it when it first came out, and he says, "Here, give me the link," and I watch it. and I was late at night, and I was sitting in my computer, and I turned it on, and it's 90 something minutes, David, isn't it?
Yep. Yep.
Right. And I started watching. I figured, well, I'll watch a little bit and then I'll watch it later. I literally could not take my eyes off it. I watched the whole thing from beginning to end, and I had laughter and tears in my eyes through a lot of it, for all the reasons you would, remembering the great moments, bringing tears to my eyes with some of the joy that it brought me as a kid and reminding me of what it was. And I can't tell you what a great job David did and how much he deserves such a great credit for honoring the show and what we did and the way he did.
I appreciate that a lot.
So it's just true. So
the response has been wonderful too.
Yeah, and I would say
that watched it.
The success of it is because of the fact that people like Larry and Doug and so many from the show were so willing to contribute and be part of it. You know, the guest stars, the other folks involved with the show, Gary Marshall's wife, Barbara, right? Ann Gilbert's kids, Jerry Paris's kids, Dick Van Dyke's son, Carl's son, right? All giving a very unique perspective to this incredible show. And the fact that it endures these 60 years later is quite a tribute to everyone involved, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. David, what are some other things that you're currently working on that maybe you're excited about coming up that we can look forward to?
I still have an active Facebook group that we try to unearth some unique nuggets about the show, and you continue to find things. You know, I hop on the treadmill every morning and throw on an episode of the Van Dyke Show while I'm on the treadmill. And even though I know what's coming, I'll still laugh, or I'll notice something new, or you know, you see a boom mic sneak into the screen and you think, oh, no one caught that, or you see a shadow on the floor of something that's going on. Carl's family donated all of his archives to the National Comedy Center in Jamestown. So there's a wealth of materials there for folks who are fans of the show to go and learn more about the show. It's always great fun to take one of Carl's scripts, if you get your hands on one, and then watch an episode to see, maybe what made it or what didn't make it to final editing of a particular show, just to get a bit more of insight of some of the behind the scenes things. That's always quite a bit of fun.
We've had wonderful comments coming in throughout from our lovely viewers watching. Suzanne Taylor says, hello all. Larry, it's such a pleasure to hear you reminisce. That was my world. You're doing such a good job. And George Mallory says, Larry, can you talk about behind the scenes episode of Ritchie Gets a Pet Duck?
Yeah, that's a pretty special time for me. It was one of my, you got about favorite episodes. That certainly is one of them. And it was great where, Ritchie gets the two pet ducks and they grow up and one of them dies. And Rob has to come tell Ritchie that we have to put the other duck back in the wild. Otherwise it's going to die in captivity. They're not meant to be in captivity, et cetera, et cetera. And I had to go in and I had to be crying during the show because I was upset that they were taking my duck away from me. Oliver, was it Oliver or Stanley? I'm trying to, anyway, that was the name of them.
Yeah.
That was a Dick, Stanley and
They were
Oliver.
named after Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy.
Exactly. Right. And so, great thing, because I went to my mother and I said, look, I have to cry during the scene. And I don't know, I'm 6-7 years old or something. How do I do that? She says, you go see Mr. Leonard Sheldon and you tell him that. And I have a picture of it. David, I think, has a picture of Sheldon kneeling in front of me, holding me by my arms. And before I went on stage, because it was filmed in front of a live audience, like we talked about, and told me this heart-wrenching story of how his dog had died. And it was just his world was his dog. And it was just horrible that his dog had died. And this, Sheldon had such an amazing way of just telling stories and relating to people and just being, captivating you. And I remember they said, action, and I went in and I was just a mess because I was just, really upset about the Sheldon Leonard, what Sheldon had told me. And it worked perfectly. It was one of my favorite moments on the show, actually.
That's fantastic. Again, there were quite a few times when there were various animals or creatures that came in. Here you are. I think you're holding a turtle in this photo here.
And that drawing, Jim, is a drawing that Dick did.
Pop up.
Yep.
That's Dick's
Well, we've
artwork
got the
on
duck,
that
and then there's the turtle. Yeah.
So Dick drew that on that back of the turtle.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you love to have that turtle shell there?
Oh my God, are you kidding me?
Where do you think that is today?
That's not one of the props Dad rescued.
Yes, exactly, Doug. It's probably dust somewhere, unfortunately. Dick was a great artist.
Yeah.
He really could draw very well. In fact, I have the ashtray somewhere. I'm not sure where.
Do you have something there?
I have the ashtray, which
from the set.
They do with it, yeah. From what I did with it. Oh well, it's right there somewhere. No, Dick did a caricature of all the cast, and they took it and they took the image and we made ashtrays of it in the day when you could have ashtrays. I think Doug's going to go get it right now anyway. And then playing cards, and then stuff that Dick would put on.
This is a music box which plays the theme song. And these are matches.
How cool is that? David, did you know about that?
Oh, so the history.
And look what Larry has.
Yes. So the history of that is
the ashtray.
There's the ashtray with Dick's drawing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yay. It was fun.
Dick's dresser, stand-in, and character actor on many episodes of the show was responsible for ordering cast Christmas or holiday gifts, right? And the cast ashtray was a gift one year, right, Larry? And
yep.
The music box, Frank Adamo actually had to work with Earl Hagen to have Earl write the sort of specific little chimey thing that you needed to have for a music box and send it somewhere to Germany to have the music boxes made. So it's quite a rare piece. And it'd be interesting to know how many of those still exist in our world today. Not too many, I'm sure. So.
No, I'm sure, Doug, you might have one of the few that there is actually anywhere.
Yep.
Well, there's a few things that I have that need to go to the Smithsonian. If something happens to me, I'll show a quick picture. Dad loved to save things, and so do I, much to the chagrin of many girlfriends. And and so one of the things I have, this is a record, Bupkis. This is the actual Bupkis record. That was a hand-painted label, Reiner Records. And then these are the two clown paintings from the Masterpiece episode. It was supposed to look like American Gothic. And then this is the Spritz gun painting from October Eve, the episode where Laura posed for a painting that the artist Serge Carpetna, played by Carl, decided to paint her nude, and Rob tries to get it back. And in the last scene, he goes to Carpetna's Greenwich Village studio, and they spritz canvas with it. This is big. They're both pretty big. This is about 30 by 40 inches, and it's going to go to the Smithsonian or someplace. But I think now I have to turn it into an ETF or an EFT or an NFT.
I don't know how well you can see this. But the last episode we ever filmed was called The Gunslinger. It was the one we filmed. It wasn't the last one it aired. And it was a dream sequence where Rob went under with Jerry giving him some gas to give him a tooth thing. And he had a dream about him being the sheriff and Carl Reiner being Big Bad Brady. And that is the poster from the sheriff's office of Big Bad Brady that actually has dart holes in it. You can't really see him, that Maury would throw darts at during the scene because it was Maury or Buddy. And that is signed by every cast and crew member of the Dick Van Dyke Show that my mother made me do at the wrap party the last after our last show.
Wow, how cool is that, huh?
Oh, and again, you can see the signatures as I get a little closer. You can't really discern them. But yeah, it's pretty special. That again, like Doug was just saying, that's something has to go to Smithsonian when I'm gone at one point. It's just where it belongs.
And
that's incredible.
And because of these guys who share what they have in their archives with me, things like that made it into my documentary to be able to share with friends and let people know what's still out there and exists in terms of collector's items from the show. So,
who's really loving all of this and makes his appearances on the show? Mr. George Burns is absolutely loving this conversation.
Well, here's the Ghost of a Chance episode. I love it. Dad was reading to me from the Golden Book Encyclopedia about ghosts, and he was reading to me to go to bed, and I said, "Well, why didn't you do an episode about ghosts?" And they wrote that episode.
Great episode.
Yeah,
that's incredible. That's incredible. Who else is also enjoying it in addition to Mr. Burns? Gilligan is also enjoying it as well. This came from Dream of Denver, Bob Denver's wife. She was a guest a couple of times on the series.
Oh, nice.
And who else is enjoying it? Mayor Goldie Wilson from Back to the Future. Don Full of Love. He sent this along too, because we had, the genie bottle, I drew genie's there and everything else. He's like, you gotta have a Mayor Goldie Wilson on set, Jim. And Dreamer said you gotta have the Gilligan and the George. My aunt collected dolls, and this got handed down to me. And he pops in every once in a while. He's usually hanging down there with his, down below with his cigar and with his martini, just overseeing things, making sure everything's going smoothly. What are some other shows? You mentioned Star Trek, but what are some other shows that are your favorites, Larry, of then and maybe now in television?
I mean, it's funny, we mentioned Hogan's Heroes earlier, and I just loved Hogan's Heroes. I think, that was such a fun show. Great spoof, obviously. Some of the old shows we see, Green Acres I always enjoyed Green Acres. It was just so much fun to watch. And then science fiction stuff. I was a big science fiction fan. I actually, Lost in Space, I really liked a lot too. I wish I could have been on Lost in Space. That was another one I thought I would have been like to be one of the Robinsons. That would have been kind of cool.
Oh yeah.
That took place way in the future, 1997.
I know, right?
Wow.
Yeah. Billy Mooney and Angela Cartwright was on the show recently as a guest, and she was fantastic. She's just extraordinary, huh?
She's a doll. Angela's special.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Marion Ross was on recently too, and she's another sweetheart of a person. And Anson Williams just became mayor of, is it Ojai, California, I think, or something? He's the mayor of one of the cities now in California. He got elected. Yeah, Potsy's running the show.
Hey, there you go.
And Jerry Paris went there and was involved in Happy Days, wasn't he, Jerry Paris?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
With Gary Marshall.
Yeah.
It was directed lots of Happy Days. And
actually, almost all of them.
Yeah.
Yes, we had Jerry Paris, and then of course the wonderful Ann who played Millie on the show. I mean, the casting on the Dick Van Dyke Show, I think, was absolutely perfect. It was ideal. It really, the cool thing is, and I think one of the successes of anything, film, television, stage, whatever it is if you just completely forget that you're watching a show and they're watching real people in real life situations. You almost forget that you're watching a show. You hear the theme.
Well, that's because it was written about real situations of the writers' real lives at home. There was almost nothing that was completely fabricated and invented ever. Maybe the Walnut episode, maybe Twilo, maybe, I don't know, but
the foot stuck in the bathtub. But that can happen.
Never bathe on Saturday.
That could happen.
Barbara Marshall says
that
happened to her.
Yeah,
the foot stuck in the.
Yeah.
You know, Jim, I do
Just
have to say
yeah.
something too, which speaking of shows, of my favorite shows, and you know, when I went back into post production, I went to work for Tony Thomas, for Danny's son, for Whit Thomas Harris Productions for several shows, and I worked on Soap, and
Mm.
Soap is probably one of the greatest shows that I ever had the opportunity to work on. I loved it. The people that we worked with were amazing. We had such a great time doing it, and I think it was such a great show because it was so controversial at the time, and that's what made it so special. And if you watch it today, I mean, it still holds up a lot because it was just a crazy spoof of that whole era and that time, and it just made fun of everything, and it was just wonderful. And I really liked that. I was lucky enough to work on that with some wonderful people. My buddy Marcia, especially, we love her.
Mm, that's so cool. Have you ever thought of writing a book or anything along those lines, Larry? I'm sure you've had people approach you, huh?
Yeah, I have, and I will. Now that it's so funny how you just mentioned it's like the other night I woke up and in the middle of the night, and I'm just sitting there thinking about all these things that had happened over my years and how I have to get a book together for a lot of things. Just the Dick Van Dyke Show, the beginning, of course, but then just my life ever since then too. I mean, you know, it's been quite a ride, and I'm really, you know, fortunate that I've been able to live such a good life, and you know, still here after some of the things I did to myself. But that's another story too, which will be in the book. And yes, I do want to do that, and I think in the next few years I'm going to get that together, and it's going to be pretty cool. So that'll be a fun thing to do.
I know Doug has got to slide out. He's got some things he's working on, but just want to chat with Larry and Dave just a little bit more. Doug, thank you for joining us, my
Thank
friend.
you,
You
Jim.
truly are
Larry,
the
I
best.
miss you and miss you both. Come, we'll go eat Greek food in Astoria again. David, anytime.
Astoria, really? I'm coming. That's where my dad's originally from.
Oh man, the best Greek restaurant Doug took us to.
Agnati Metsa, 19th and Ditmars. Free plug. Would have fantastic food.
Yeah. That
good to see you,
good.
my friend. We look forward to seeing
everybody out there in Jim's world. Have a lovely Thanksgiving and great holidays, and be healthy and be safe and be well.
Doug, you're a sweetheart of a guy to join us.
And come to Broadway. It's alive.
Come to Broadway, and I shall see you soon again, my friend Doug, okay?
Be well, everybody.
Bye, Douglas.
You take care. Great guy, huh? Truly. I tell you, what a class act. So, you know, that's great. You were mentioning the book that you're thinking about doing. That's terrific, Larry, huh?
Yeah, I think, again, I've been approached before, and I've had publishers that want, and I want to do it. I mean, it's a story that I want to tell for several reasons. And I think as I was thinking the other night, it's more to me of like, I want people to be able to learn things. I love to have people to be able to learn from stuff. And if I can put something down that gives people some joy, gives some people something to laugh about or cry about or both or whatever, and then learn from experiences I've had, then that just makes it just wonderful for me. So that's what I want to do.
Absolutely. Larry is going to scoot off just for a quick second, and then he'll be right back. He'll be right back after this message from our sponsor, which back then, David, would have been who? The sponsors. You recall the sponsors? I'm sure
we could have Palmolive, I think, was a dish soap, or
right.
I think a toothpaste company. Procter and Gamble was one of the primary sponsors. So any products related to them, right? So
I would imagine for you, David, and again, a real pleasure seeing you again and stopping by the show. You know, I'm a huge fan of what you do, and I'm a television guy through and through, and have been, and work in it, and I've always loved it. And this must be almost like a kid in a candy store in a way for you, being such an authority on the Dick Van Dyke Show and all the people involved, and to become, you know, friends with them as well. And it must be like you're living out, you know, you've had an extraordinary career prior to any of this, but you became the head walnut. And it must be like being a kid in a candy store, just really exciting, isn't it?
It is, and I think it all came to a culmination. Larry mentioned earlier they did the Dick Van Dyke reunion show, Revisited, in 2004, and sort of the highlight for me was a call from Carl Reiner inviting me to come and be a fly on the wall, if you will, during the production. Right, so I had met all of the cast members and had established friendships with many of them, many of the children as well. So it's sort of during the week as I was hanging out on the closed set, right, watching the production, it sort of dawned on me or became a realization to me that, all along I was sort of the guy that wrote about the show or the guy that wrote about the cast. And suddenly the revelation hit me that I'm sort of part of that Dick Van Dyke Show family now, right? And I was welcomed into the circle. And that was one of the nicest compliments paid to me by Bill Persky about my documentary was, he similarly said, like Larry did, that he watched it and he'll watch it many times again. But if he wanted to make sure that I knew from his point of view that he considered me part of the Dick Van Dyke Show family, which was like the greatest compliment that a fan could ever have, right? So my friendships with Carl through the years and Dick and Rosemarie and Larry and fortunately I never met Maury in person, but I spoke to him any number of times on the telephone, and the friendships that I still have with so many involved with the show is the thread that keeps the show alive and keeps the percolating going to keep it in the forefront of everyone's mind. So
absolutely right. Yeah. Suzanne Taylor says, Jim, David was wonderful working on that show. For those who were in it, he treated us so well, like we were bigger stars than we were. Suzanne Taylor.
So Suzanne Taylor is Bill Persky's ex-wife, who was also on an episode of the Van Dyke Show near the end of the show's run. And Sue was very gracious.
Do you recall the episode?
It was with Joby Baker. Yes. My neighbor's
Welcome, Suzanne. Nice to have you here on the Jim Masters Show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was, again, someone very graciously, when I contacted her, said she would love to contribute her memories to the show. So she's part of the documentary as well. So
that's
there
incredible.
Aren't, sadly, some 60 years later, there aren't a lot of folks left from the show, but there are a small cadre of folks who are still there.
I think those nostalgic networks like the Me TVs, the Antenna TVs, the Tubies, and all of that have sort of kept everything alive and kept things, it's reintroducing or introducing these iconic shows and, of course, iconic movies over the time as well to a whole new generation. Because you hear a lot of people that are far younger say, wow, that's really great stuff. Quality writing, great sets, pure comedy, great theme songs, just so much time and attention would go into these productions that some of the folks today look at it like, wow, that's incredible. And, today people take their cell phone and they can do something in their bedroom or whatever, and now suddenly they're a rock star. But at that time, there was a lot of hours, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of take and retake and big sets and equipment and all of that to put it all together. And it was, quite a production, literally.
Yeah, I think the, during the pandemic, a whole new generation of fans discovered the Dick Van Dyke Show because they were trapped at home and looking for something to watch, and somehow that appeared in their feeds and they gave it a watch and then they were hooked.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Jim, I think that's well said, Jim, in terms of your whole analogy of that. And going back to where you asked me about, some of these autograph shows that I've done over the years, the Comic-Con type things, whatever. It's been really refreshing to me to see how many young people would come up and say, gosh, I really love watching you. And they're a lot younger than I am. And I'm like, well, really? Do you know the show? Oh yeah. When my mom used to watch it and I grew up watching it, and I've seen it on reruns and MeTV and like Antenna. And like you said, decades in these things. And it is kind of to what I'm looking for. I don't know if satisfying is the right word, but it's encouraging to know that younger people are still interested and still want to, see those beautiful shows that were made back in our times and get to know them and really, enjoy them the way they were meant to be enjoyed. So it's a good point you make there, Jim. It really is.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's opening it up to a whole new generation, and there's a lot of Ritchie Petries that were out there, that identify also with your character. I would imagine it must be really cool when you do have people come up to you, and even through the years, just letting you know how much that show has meant to them, you have meant to them, and just the whole experience. That's something that you actually can't ever script. It's coming from real people, and it must be amazing, a wonderful feeling.
You can't, and it is a wonderful feeling. And as I said earlier, if I can ever do something that just gives somebody joy or makes somebody's life a little better or a little happier or gives them something, then that makes my life all worthwhile. And that's to your point, basically. It does make me feel really good about that. I have a really, really dear friend who's an editor, John Braun, and John has said to me on numerous occasions, I was so envious. I wanted Rob and Laura as my parents. Every kid wanted Rob and Laura as their parents when they grew up. I'm like, man, I can't believe it, So yeah, it's pretty cool that when you hear that, it does give you a really warm feeling about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say they would want to be part of the Dick Van Dyke Show. A lot of kids also wanted to grow up with the Brady Bunch, the Schwartz shows. And then there was a great show that was on in the late 70s, I think early 80s, Family, with Seda Thompson and James Broderick, Christy McNichol, Meredith Baxter Burney, Gary Frank. That was an Aaron Spelling production, a drama, and that was a good one too. And everybody wanted to live in that house, which actually that house they used still exists in Pasadena. It's a real house that they used, which was kind of cool.
Funny,
that's great.
Speaking of the house, I just saw, I think yesterday or something, as we come into the Christmas holidays now, or the holidays, the house that was the house in A Christmas Story, it just went up for sale. Did you see that?
Yes. Yeah. Scott Schwartz was a guest on our show.
Okay.
And it was, of course, the kid that got the tongue stuck on the pole there, and he was in the toy with Jackie Gleason and Richard Pryor. Really amazing conversation with him as well. And it's when you think about it, it's just these things are just part of Americana. They're a part of our lives, and we're so glad that they are. And for you, Larry, what are some things that you're working on? As I mentioned in the introduction, you are up in beautiful Portland. People might think you're still in LA, but you've made your home up in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, we have. And what am I working on? Well, I'm working on lowering my handicap on my golf game. That's one of the.
That's a good one.
Right now. We're just still. It's so funny. I was spent so many years working in in post-production sales, mostly in post-production sales, and it really can be consuming. It was a wonderful life. I loved it. I had a great time. I met some of the most amazing people in my lifetime, worked with some of the most amazing people, like we talked about with my friends at Soap and Benson and the shows that I worked on. So I'm still just kind of like decompressing myself from that a lot in terms of just getting used to being like, just kind of like I can get up in the morning and go like, what do I have to do today? Nothing. Okay, that's great. Let's do that. Right. But the book for sure is one of them. And I would love to do more acting. I really would. I mean, I'd like to. I enjoyed it a lot. Carl made a comment to me when we did the Revisited show. When I did it, my scene was I was on the phone with him, Alan Brady, right, and I were talking on the phone. And at the end of the scene, he came up to me. He says, "Man," he says, "you are so good." He goes, I didn't know what to expect. It's been so many years and you did such a great job. He says, what have you been doing all these years? And I said, well, Carl, I'm a salesman, so I act every day because that's what I do.
Right.
And he kind of laughed and he went, no, I mean, you're really good. He goes, gosh, I guess I knew what I was doing when I casted you, didn't I? And it was so wonderful, such a wonderful thing to hear from Carl Reiner. It was so flattering to hear. And I do enjoy it. So I would love to do more acting, as the years go on, and whatever kind of roles that, people would think I would be good at. And I'd enjoy that. But just working on, just like I said, just kind of trying to enjoy life a little bit. It seems like we're always busy,
Yeah.
He says you don't work anymore. What do you do? I mean, I don't know. Every time I turn around, we're going here, doing this, doing that. Something's going on. And we're people here, people that. It's like whatever. But that's what I love. I'm a real social person, and that's what I did all my life in terms of working in the entertainment businesses and in business. And so I still enjoy doing that. And we met some friends. We're going to go celebrate Thanksgiving on the Oregon coast with them. And, we're just having a good time. It's just a really good part of life for me right now.
That's fantastic. Have you ever passed through New Rochelle, New York?
I never have, believe it. Actually, no, I take that back. Have I? Yes, I have. I don't mean passed through it, because my dad was born in Long Island, in Sag Harbor.
Oh, yeah. Sag Harbor. Yeah, that's beautiful out there. Yeah.
And thus the Dodger fan. He was a Brooklyn Dodger fan.
Brooklyn,
about that
like
earlier.
my father. Yeah.
When they moved out to LA, he bought season seats literally when they moved to LA. And we had them until just last year at Dodger Stadium. So I've been through New York a lot, traveled to New York a lot, out in the island, out through the city and through, the state itself. And yes, I did pass through New Rochelle one time as we were driving, and it was like, look, there's New Rochelle. Look, there's New Rochelle. Okay,
Right.
New Rochelle. Like,
And if the people of New Rochelle only knew who was passing through, they probably would have done roadblocks.
The street's named the Carl Reiner Street in New Rochelle, isn't it, David?
So Bonnie
Yes,
Meadow Road has
Bonnie
an
Meadow.
alternate sign now that also says Dick Van Dyke Show Way. Yes.
Right.
You went to the house, right? Because there was some clips where you're actually in front of
I did.
Carl Reiner's house.
I actually know the gentleman now who lives in Carl's old house. And I did a promo for the documentary in front of his house. I got permission from him to, instead of just showing up with a camera, I decided I should. My wife made me ask before you go stalk this guy's house. So we shot a promo, and it was
my wife
cool
made me ask.
Yeah, sort of cool to be on 48 Bonnie Meadow Road and know the history that's there. And Carl did have a giant rock in his backyard. There's a show about that, but that again came from real life. His backyard had a giant rock, and the house when he bought it, all the other houses were sold except for this house. And they went and they looked at the house and they thought, well, why isn't the house sold? Right. So it turns out they looked in the back, and they did. There was this giant rock with like the sloping landscape or whatever. Turns out whenever it rained, all the water ran off of Carl's property into the neighbor's basements. So that was the dilemma of the backyard rock. But again, Carl would take that and write an episode about it and somehow change it into a Dick Van Dyke storyline.
It's funny, Jim. I actually do have one piece of memorabilia, I guess we call. Anyway, when I was working in post-production, I ended up working with a associate producer who went to New Rochelle High School. And she gave me a New Rochelle High School 1955 pin, which I had.
Wow, huh?
Which is the year I was born, by the way, which is really cool.
Right. That is amazing. That is absolutely awesome. Good stuff. You guys are fantastic. Truly, really a pleasure to see you again, David and Larry, to meet you for the first time, and hopefully, maybe in person, breaking bread. That would be an honor and a pleasure. What are some of the continued blessings and joys in your life that propel you forward as you go along, Larry?
Well, I think we talked about it earlier. I think it's just, listen, I have a lot of wonderful people I've met in my life that are so very, very special to me in so many ways. And I still love just being around them. My mother, God bless her, is still alive at 98 years old. And so I'm fortunate about that. My brothers and sisters, unfortunately, I've lost a couple of my family members this year, but, I still have my family that keeps me, together and keeps us kind of close. And more importantly, as I said, I think just the family of my friends and people that I love, that I still have dear feelings for, and we still keep connected. And we've had people come visit us up here now since we've been here, and we've been down, of course, back home a few times to see people. And it's just always special to be around, good friends who appreciate, who are friends because I'm me, not because I was somebody on a television show. Right. And that's really special too, and that's kind of what I've always kind of been to get through. It's like, yes, it was wonderful. Yes, I love it. Yes, I know people are I'm proud of it. And it's nice to have people admire and acknowledge me for that. But, my closest friends are people that I just grew up being, Larry. And right. Just that's what was the special part about it.
You still have family on Long Island or in the New York area?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My cousin Vinny, because every Italian has a cousin named Vinny, right? Of course.
Good name for a movie.
Yeah, right. I don't use that. Yeah, I still have a lot of family back in Sag Harbor area. Yeah.
That's a beautiful, beautiful place to be. Have you ever been out that way, David? Sag Harbor, Long Island, out east?
I haven't, even though I've lived here all my life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. What are some of the blessings and joys in your life, David, that propel you to continue doing what you do so well?
In a similar way to Larry, right? It's the relationships and the friendships that you have and you maintain, right? My wife and I both retired in June of 2020 and have pursued other hobbies and interests that we have. And, I think we're grateful and fortunate that we're healthy, right? And have the ability to now get around the country and do some traveling. We're going to visit with some family in Colorado for Thanksgiving, and then fly to Southern California for a few days just to relax. It's I think being appreciative for each day that you have, and to contribute. And I think to read what Larry said is, how can we make our world a better place in these times, right? Let's be a little patient with each other and listen to each other. And you can have different viewpoints, but diplomatically and respectfully discuss them, right? So,
exactly.
So I'll do one quick plug for the documentary in that regard, right? So
yes, where they can see it and everything. Yeah,
where, folks go and watch it. If you enjoy it, and the documentary will ask you this too, is consider a donation to St. Jude. Danny Thomas, the executive producer of the Van Dyke Show, created St. Jude to help kids. What a better way to pay tribute to this tremendous show if folks would be generous enough to give a contribution to St. Jude and help those that are a little less fortunate than we are, right? I received no compensation for the production that I did, but it was out of my true love and passion for the show, and as a give back, really for me to pay tribute to all those involved. And what a great way it would be if folks would consider that. So that would be my Thanksgiving. Thanks and giving, Marlo Thomas's pitch, right, for St. Jude. So consider what you can be thankful for, and give a donation.
Beautifully said. What a wonderful way to wrap this extraordinary conversation with each of you and with Doug as well, our buddy. I hope the show met whatever expectations you had, Larry, and you enjoyed the time with me as much as I absolutely have with you and all of our viewers watching around the world.
It was very special. It was wonderful. It was amazing. Thank you, Jim. It's fun to see these guys, obviously, especially David and Doug. It's wonderful to have a person like you that cares about continuing on legacy of what our history really is in the entertainment business, and it's been a very special day for me. So I thank you. I had an enjoyable, wonderful time, and David said a wonderful thing about St. Jude. I think that's great. And to tag on as well, I just hope that people are starting to realize that you don't need to be mean or horrible or, adverse against somebody just because you might have a different feeling. And I think we need to get back to that in our country. And I'm sorry that we've gotten away from it somewhat, but hopefully moments like this and people are watching can kind of help us get back to where we need to be as a loving society. I mean, really.
I agree 100%. We talk about that a lot on this show and in my professional work. More kindness, more empathy, less division, and more collaborative nature. The world spins a lot smoother on its axis when things are more harmonious and we all appreciate each other and we realize we all have talents. We're all here for a reason. And life is short, as we know, and we have seen, and the last couple of years have certainly reminded us of that. And so to bring us all together, conversations like this and remembering iconic shows like the Dick Van Dyke Show and just the memories and the feelings that a show like that brings to the surface. It's kind of good to, carry that on, not just for the 30 minutes you're watching an episode of a great show like that, but maybe taking some of those simpler ways of thinking and those values and how people laugh and they care about one another and applying them to beyond the 30 minutes of the Dick Van Dyke Show, but into everyday life, right?
Yeah. Well said. Thank you.
The pleasure is all mine. You guys are absolutely terrific. Larry, thanks so much for spending all this time with us here on the Jim Masters Show live series. Truly an honor and a pleasure. And I hope you spread the word about our show. You're welcome back anytime you wish to pop in, whether it's for a quick amount or a good conversation. We'll keep the porch light on for you, my friend.
Sounds good, but I look forward to that. And it was a pleasure.
And David, thank you, my friend, true gentleman you are, and congratulations on all of your successes as well. Truly great seeing you once again, and congratulations on the documentary and all the other wonderful things that you're doing. I love, this is wonderful too. Suzanne says, a gift for all of you about saving the world that I pay attention to. Kate Raworth's Planetary Economics, New Tools for Local Transformation. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that, Suzanne. Merlin's watching in Canada. Happy Thanksgiving. Merry Christmas, guys. Kathleen Walker's in New York City. This was awesome. Thank you all. Christine Clifton's in North Carolina. Thanks to Larry and David and Douglas for sharing so many backstories of one of the greatest shows of our time. It's a joy seeing how special a show has been in their life. A fascinating conversation. I appreciate that. Wonderful for you to say that. Jane watching in Sweden, one of our regular lovedies as well. Thank you guys for being here tonight. This was a great and fun show. Thanks, Jim. My pleasure. Sherry Larson in Kansas in the heartland. She says, thank you for being here with us tonight, gentlemen. What a fantastic conversation. Thank you for sharing your memories with us. Please come back soon. Really appreciate all these fantastic comments from everybody. You guys are the best. All right, Larry Mathews, I hope you ate dinner already, or do you still have to eat?
No, don't worry. We're on the West Coast, so it's only
still early.
We're on our way out. Don't worry about a thing.
Well, you sang for your supper, and we really appreciate it. And David, you as well, my friend.
Have some wine for me, Larry.
Oh, I will.
Larry, best of the holidays, and we'll talk again real soon. An honor and a pleasure. And David, thank you as well for joining us.
My pleasure. Great to see you, Jim. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Thanks,
and to
Jim.
you too, Larry.
And to everybody as well. Thank you.
All right. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Larry, David, again, thank you. It's good to see you as well.
You too, Jim. Be well.
You too. What an iconic and epic episode this has been of the Jim Masters Show Live Entertainment Lifestyle Variety Talk Show series, where we're bringing back truly the lost art of conversation, kind of like Johnny Carson, Dick Cavett, and Merv, and Mike, and Steve Allen, and Regis, as we've always said. And today we had a wonderful conversation with folks who really have made magic. You know how I always talk about making TV magic? Well, Larry Mathews joining us here on the show. He played Ritchie Petrie, son of Rob and Laura Petrie, played by Mary Tyler Moore, Dick Van Dyke, on the iconic Dick Van Dyke Show. David Van Deusen, of course, who created that fabulous documentary special, the 60th anniversary of the Dick Van Dyke Show. And, of course, our buddy and personal friend, Douglas Denoff, joining us. Of course, he was with us with a special episode where we talked about his career. He's, of course, is an iconic Broadway producer, investor, and is a great friend. You got a chance to not only go back, in memory lane here, but here's some nuggets. Here's some special memories from Larry, who was right there, on the set, and from Doug, whose dad, Doug was a child of Hollywood as well, too, being surrounded by all of it. Doug's father, created That Girl with Marlo Thomas. And you got a chance to hear from David again, who celebrates the Dick Van Dyke Show. Of course, an iconic producer and writer and editor as well. What was really great is some of the conversations that we had that even went beyond just the show itself, what it was like, working with these iconic actors and actresses and the producers and the people behind the scenes. Of course, there's Sam Denoff. That's Doug's father. If you joined us late, he and Bill Persky, so many incredible episodes of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and so many episodes of television to begin with. And, when life moves on, you have to remember some of the incredible things that have made you smile, have made you think, have made you cry. And the Dick Van Dyke Show, one of those iconic shows that have done that. And it was really wonderful how real Larry really is. He's just a regular guy. He's Ritchie Petrie, but he's Larry. And when he talked about what it was like working with the Duck and that sadness on set during that time, that's a real kid expressing real emotions. And today he still, thinks about that. And this is the 60th anniversary special that David Van Deusen did, which was fantastic. And we appreciate these photos exclusively being sent to us to show and share with all of you on the Jim Masters Show Live series. There's Mary Tyler Moore and Dick Van Dyke when on set, one of those on the set photos. This is when Ritchie was sick. Another great shot. And Dick Van Dyke, as of today's episode, of course, we lost Mary Tyler Moore, and Rosemary is gone, and Richard Deacon is gone, who played Mel. Maury Amsterdam, who played Buddy, is gone. And, Anne, who played Millie, and Jerry Paris, and they're not with us, but the memories are still with us. And of course, Carl Reiner, Sheldon Leonard, just amazing. Aren't these great shots? Dick Van Dyke is still with us. He's, I think, around 97. One of my favorite people. Like I've mentioned, Dick Van Dyke, Carol Burnett, Florence Henderson. I've had the opportunity to meet Florence on several occasions, Carol as well. Great story about the turtle, huh? The painted turtle. Dick Van Dyke painted that, which Larry is holding. There they are. Dick Van Dyke, Mary Tyler Moore, Larry Mathews, whose father comes from Long Island, New York, as do I. He grew up even Sag Harbor, where Larry Mathews' father is from, is beautiful as well. I come from further out east on Long Island, further away from the city, further out east. It's beautiful. It looks like Cape Cod. Sag Harbor, Long Island is absolutely beautiful. It does look like Cape Cod as well. Right across the Long Island Sound from Connecticut. And there he is. There's a cool exclusive shot that they sent us of Larry. And this is a great one too. Dick Van Dyke, Mary Tyler Moore, Maury Amsterdam, Rosemary, and Richard Deacon, who played Mel, who Maury always drove crazy. Larry Mathews joining us here on the Jim Masters Show, live entertainment lifestyle variety talk show series, along with David Van Deusen, Douglas Denoff. Really a spectacular episode, and we thank all of you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode and all the episodes you enjoy, give us a thumbs up on our YouTube channel. There is a thumbs up icon that is there. I think our Wi-Fi, there was some storms in the area here, so I think our Wi-Fi was a little wacky at certain points of the conversation, picture freezing and audio weirdness. I think because there's some rough storms outside, but still a great conversation. And so, yeah, give us a thumbs up. Leave a comment on our YouTube channel as well at Jim Masters TV. And also be sure and hit this red button that you see on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. Subscribe. Become a part of the Lovity family and celebrate everything we're doing here at the Jim Masters Show series through our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. Show it some lovity. And when you subscribe, there's no cost to do that. That is absolutely free. There's no cost. And we're dressed, our attire this evening or this morning or this afternoon, whatever time you're watching this, because, our viewers are international. They come from all around the world. So it could be any time of the day that you're watching this. We're sort of in our Dick Van Dyke. Actually, I wear this stuff normally. It's a very comfortable cardigan. I love sweaters. I love turtlenecks. I could have easily been a part of the Dick Van Dyke Show. Just could have lived next door to the Petries. Absolutely. Or could have been a friend of Ritchie's across the street that we played baseball with. I would come over with the turtle. He would have the duck. And I had turtles when I was a kid too, little green turtles. So sort of in our attire that blends into the Dick Van Dyke Show theme, the suburban theme a little bit. I just don't have a pipe or anything along those lines. Although actually I do. I don't smoke, but I do have a pipe. My Uncle Sonny, when he passed, my Aunt Kitty gave me Uncle Sonny's pipe. And because, the holidays, I would always smell the pipe, the cherry wood. And again, I don't smoke, but and every once in a while, like this week with Thanksgiving, I will be pulling that pipe out of, little souvenir box we have of family mementos. And I'll just go one slight whiff of the pipe. The wood of the pipe smells so good, that cherry wood of the pipe. So yeah, we're in our sort of Dick Van Dyke sort of attire. Although again, I would wear this normally anyway. Kathleen Walker is here, and Kathleen Walker, thank you very much, Kathleen. And another awesome show. Thank you, Jim. Nice to hear such great stories. You're the best, Jim. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. Kind of you to share. There's the green we love. And I don't know what color this is coming out to be. It looks like it's a blue, right? But it is sort of like a bluish color. Sometimes it's hard to tell. There you go. With the lighting, sometimes it's hard to tell. Boy, that blows the light out, huh? Thank you very much, Kathleen. Like I said, what we do here is unique. It's special. It's very interactive. We don't just do interviews, and I don't make the show just all about me. Some people that do things, they make it all about them. They tell you everything that they're doing and how great they are and how special they are. And I bring us all in. I tell you about some of the things that are happening in my life, my world, my career in television, radio, stage, and film. And we bring you guys in. We have guests that share about their lives as well. in the way that Larry Mathews did and Douglas Denoff did and David Van Deusen did as well, which was fantastic. So Kathleen, we always like to make sure we acknowledge those who do super chat or super emojis or super stickers. And there's an A-list of people, an A-list tier of Jim Masters Show lovities who share all the links on their social media and oftentimes will do this in support of our series. Kathleen, you are on that A-list, and we really appreciate that. So that helps us. That'll pay for like one of the light bulbs, and we'll put that to good use. Sue is here, checking in from the Bronx in New York City. Good to see you, Sue. Hope you enjoyed the episode as well with our very, very special guests. And we really appreciate all of you here. And Sherry Larson says, thank you, Jim, for an absolutely wonderful show. I hope it was, again, the Wi-Fi was a little funky because there were some storms outside. So I don't know if anything froze but hey, it's a 2-hour show. So we got a lot of good stuff that we talked about. And like I said, Larry Mathews was very open and very conversational. And he's like that anyway. And so is my buddy Doug and David. And that's what I try to do. I try to make these shows conversations amongst friends. If we never met each other before we started, we'll be friends by the time, the episode is wrapped. Thank you, Jim, for an absolutely wonderful show. You're amazing. Good night, all, and have a wonderful Monday. Love and hugs. Thank you very, very much to you, Sherry. Got an extraordinary lineup of guests this week as well. So we're putting the promos and everything together for that. So check out our social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Jim Masters TV. Like, follow, subscribe, tweet, all the rest. And our YouTube channel is Jim Masters TV. Ms. Pat in Texas is here. Thank you very much. God bless to you as well, Ms. Pat. Linda Johnson is here. Thank you all for talking to us. Thank you, Jim. Absolutely. That's what we do. It's very interactive. That's why we call it a talk show. And you guys, you fabulous folks, are like our studio audience. Even though we're not in the same building like a studio audience would have been for the Dick Van Dyke Show, the studio audience is right there across from the set with the laughter and everything else. You guys here in our chat room and watching are like the Jim Masters Show Lovity studio audience. It's just the audience studio is huge because it's everybody watching around the world. And we thank everybody for all the great comments and all the love coming in here from everybody. So you guys be well and take care. And we don't say goodbye around here. We say see you later. Ciao, cheers. Slancha, moi loop, viazim, buenas noches, shalom, sayonara, and all the rest. This is your host, Jim Masters, thanking you for your time this time. Till next time, be well, take care of yourself. We'll be back. Another great episode coming up. And if you're watching this Memorex, you're watching this not live because we did this episode live. You're watching this perhaps in the archives. Well, stay right there. Another episode comes up for you. Matter of fact, there's hundreds of episodes you can watch and binge watch here on the Jim Masters Show series. You got a chance to see Gilligan, and we threw in some of the TV characters. Gilligan stopped by from Gilligan's Island. Don Fullilove, Mayor Goldie Wilson from Back to the Future. Matter of fact, Don Fullilove from Back to the Future, the movie, he was a guest on our show. If you didn't see that episode, check it out. It's in the archives. And of course, George Burns made his appearance as usual on the Jim Masters Show Live series. We always have a fun time here. We learn something, we connect. Great words that Larry and David had at the end about kindness and empathy and, inspiring other people. And enough with all the nonsense going on and the divisiveness and all that crazy stuff, bring everybody together, take some of the vibes of the Dick Van Dyke Show and sort of, like I said, have it expand just a 30-minute episode, bring it into your life. Really great words that they shared. And as David said, when you watch, the documentary, the 60th anniversary celebration, Dick Van Dyke Show, you can make a donation as well to St. Jude's, which Danny Thomas started. Marlo Thomas continues and is an extraordinary organization. I fully believe in the work of St. Jude's. I'm a big, big, big believer in supporting charities and those who are, helping others. And many of you have written to me and you said this show helps you. When we started this show 2.5 years ago, as of now, if you're watching this 10 years from now, well, then that's old news. But hundreds of episodes ago, a lot of you wrote to me personally, privately, and even posted in the chat room, how much you look forward to our episodes, how you enjoy watching the episodes, how you're sort of, drawn into these episodes. You enjoy watching our past episodes in the archives. And you were hoping that I wasn't going to do this series only during the pandemic. And so, hey, we're here and we're still here. And we thank you so much for, your time and attention and everything. And we thank Larry Mathews for joining us as well. And we're still here. As long as you guys are here, we will still be here for you as well. What a great show. What a great episode of the Jim Masters Show series, huh? All right, gang. Like I said, we don't say goodbye around here. We say see you later. We say take care, ciao, cheers, and all the rest. And another great episode with, again, really cool photos we got a chance to see, taking you behind the scenes of the iconic Dick Van Dyke Show. If you joined us late and you would like to see this entire episode again, the episode is available on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much, Kathleen. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm thankful for this show and you. Thank you, Kathleen. I appreciate that. Really kind of you to say that. All right, we're going to wrap. Love you all. Take care. Love one another. Take care of one another. And take care of yourself. Love yourself as well and be good to yourself. We thank, there's another great shot. There's so many. All right. We're going to scoot out. We've got prepare more shows coming up. And we thank David Van Deusen, Douglas Denoff, and Larry Mathews for joining us on the Jim Masters Show Live. And we thank all of you, everybody watching around the world. I'm your host, Jim Masters. This was really a special episode. They all are. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching the Jim Masters Show. Cheers.